So, huh? I mean, like this. I will just stand here then. Okay, so before I start, how many demo sceners do we actually have in the room at the moment?
Demo scener.
If you are a demo scener, can you put your hand up? So how about 4 in the audience here? Okay. So let's get this going. So I am Violet, also known in the demo scene as Raccoon Violet. I've been an active demo scener since 2019, and for what I do in the demo scene, I do 2D and 3D modeling, and graphics and pixel art and things like that. I first discovered the demo scene in 2008, and my first demo party was in 2019, which was a small one in the UK called Nova. And in total, I've been traveling across Europe a lot. I've gone to 42 different parties around the demo scene. And my favorite demo platform is the Nintendo 3DS. And this is my good friend Freya,
Hello.
who is also here with me today.
Well, I'm also known as Varpo in demo scene and other circles, but this is a Ferrycon, so I'm Freya today. I do some programming and some 2D art and whatever sometimes, and I've been actively doing demo scene stuff since 2023, so a couple of years. And that's basically my bio. I've watched a bunch of demos, and then it took me many years until I actually made anything.
So a lot of you are probably wondering what actually is the demo scene. It's a very important thing to start off with. So the demo scene is a computer art subculture, and it goes back all the way back to the 70s and 80s and the early days of home computing. You can thank bedroom coders for it. And the term demo scene is a reference to demonstrating what computers can do and what they're actually capable of, by pushing the limitations of them. And the scene is basically like a scene of, it's basically a scene of people. It's a group, big community, kind of like the furry fandom, but like with a big computer following behind it. And a lot of them do lots of different things like music and painting and coding, things like that. Probably, if you've been around the software cracking scene and things like that, maybe, you've probably seen stuff like Keygens and things like that. Razer 1911 is a really famous demo crew, and they do stuff like software Keygens, things like that. And a very, very famous piece of music from Keygen software called Unreal Superhero, which it's coming through the laptop speaker. This is what I get for no pre-preparation.
We did pre-prepare.
We kind of pre-prepared.
We did prepare, but then I did it anyway.
Yeah. That's,
Where's the radio? It's Sony Vegas.
any Sony Vegas student is here. Yeah, very, very catchy song, and very well known to anyone who was very legally obtained Sony Vegas. So, what actually is a demo party? So, a demo party is an event organized by volunteers who are really into the demo scene. And the demo parties usually include showcases, DJ sets, competitions, live performances, workshops, seminars. And today there are over 30 demo parties currently announced happening around Europe this year, and more to be announced later on. Outside Europe, they're not particularly common. I believe there's only 2 happening in the US at the moment. And so the big thing that happens at the demo parties is the competitions, or compos, as they are referred to. And they involve a variety of categories, such as real-time computer productions, photography, graphics, music, old school, and fast compos. The fast compos are usually ones that are announced at the party, so you actually have to make something at the party itself to present. So no pre-preparation or anything like that. And the photo on the right here is from Revision Demo Party, which has hundreds and hundreds, almost like it's the biggest one in Europe, outside of another one that happens in Finland called Assembly, which you know probably a lot more about than I do.
It's
from there.
Revision is the biggest demo party with an asterisk, and Assembly is also the biggest demo party with another asterisk. You're not legally allowed to say which one of them is bigger, because it's impossible to define.
And an incredibly useful site to go to if you're interested in seeing where a local demo party is called demoparty.net, which has a huge map of where each of them are happening. So another big thing in the demo scene is demo groups. And the groups that I put on here specifically are very relevant to the furry fandom because they have a lot of furries in them. We have Furry Trash Group, which is one of the big furry groups. We have Little Fluffy Group, which is one that formed recently, and I believe there's quite a few Belgians behind that one. We have Marmot, which is a smaller group of me and a few friends. We do a lot of stuff on the Nintendo Wii. And Wild Furs, which is one of the Dutch groups. And Slipstream, which is a UK-based group, but we are very beginner-friendly. We are very welcoming to a lot of people to join our group. And an important thing about demo groups is to take part in the demo scene, you do not need to be in a demo group. It is not necessary. But it's a great way to make connections with people. A demo group is usually a team of demo sceners who work together to release their works. And you can also be parts of multiple demo groups at the same time as well. You are not restricted to only being in one demo group. I'm pretty sure there are some demo sceners out there that have about 50 demo groups listed in their portfolio. Some familiar names that you might have heard of in the wider demo scene are Titan, Future Crew, Razor 1911, and Bob Roush. Not all of these scene groups are particularly active today, but they still occasionally release things from time to time. Usually they're working on some really big productions that take quite a long time to make. And usually the best way to join a demo group as well is going to demo parties and meeting up with people who make the demos and seeing if they need help with certain assets such as music and art and things like that. Or maybe you can make some new friends at demo parties and form your own demo group and do releases under the demo group as well. There's no official restrictions to how you form a demo group. It's pretty much you get a bunch of friends together and you make things, and that's how the group works. So where do furries come into this? So the demo scene itself has quite a lot of furries, and I was trying to find some way to summarize why where the crossover comes in. So there's a group chat on Telegram called DemoFurs, and I made this Venn diagram to show where the crossover is. And that sparked quite a bit of discussion in the group. So yeah, furries are pretty much everything. If there's a specific skill in any field, some furry out there is completely cracked at it. Tried drafting a more accurate chart, but it required 5-dimensional shapes, and I gave up. Should artists be in there somewhere? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, the artists are in the middle.
Yeah, it comes as part of the computer art.
Shouldn't hackers and computer science be the same group?
I mean, those two are they do cross over a lot. I mean, hackers, you get makers and things like that as well, and it all really.
There's also boring computer science people.
Yeah. Yeah. One notable factor with furries versus most sceners and hackers is furries gear heavily towards visual art and rarely make music, which I guess I mean, this is just what was said in the chat. It's, I'm showing opinions here.
Interesting opinions.
So I also have almost all musicians in the fandom are part of other niche communities like Demoscene, which is true. There's a lot of different communities furries also take part in outside of the fandom. And also, I know a lot of brony musicians that are also furries.
It's a circle.
And then they started going on about bronies. Bronies are a subset of furries, but then a lot of them did eventually become furries as well. So if you said this in the earlier days, you would have been piled on by the bronies. It was like the decade-old "I'm just an anthro artist" thing. Let's just say a lot of scenes are very fluffy for silly reasons. Labels are great for identifying things that fit into a certain or similar category. When you start using it to distance yourself from things like this, it becomes weird. I'm not a furry. I'm not an anthro artist. Bro, what are you worried about? I'm not trans, I just like being a girl, kind of. But the furries, they are furry. I should ask this at the next brony listen party if I catch it. Do bronies still insist they are not furries? I want to know. And finally, I concluded this with, I'm not a Demoscene, I'm just Spanish. Amiga! So I'm going to show an example of a demo for Unreal Engine called Solid States by a furry called Blue Raven. And this is real time running on a RTX GPU.
He just wanted to flex, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not realize this was at the end of the clip.
He just wanted to flex.
Yeah.
That's
But
it.
yeah, so these are the kind of demos that you would find at a demo party like Revision in the PC demo compo, which is basically stretching the limits of what a GPU in the PC can do.
I have trouble understanding because the music from outside is so loud.
Huh?
Either need to close the doors or you need to speak up.
Ah,
The door's closed now.
I'm speaking as loud as I can at the moment, so
I mean,
I can like put the mask down.
yeah, this is better.
So outside of the PC compo, there are other platforms as well that demos are made for. A popular platform is a fantasy console called TIC-80, quite similar to another platform called Pico 8, which has similar restrictions. I don't know how many people in here are familiar with fantasy consoles in general. They're kind of like a console that's been made for the PC and other multi-platforms that simulate the limitations of older consoles, and it makes it a lot more accessible for people to code with today. So TIC-80 is mainly Lua based, but you can program in other languages using it as well. I'm going to show another demo made using TIC-80 by a furry called Sule, who is very prominent in the scene at the moment and doing lots of really amazing things. Another thing I forgot to mention is during a lot of demos you will usually see greetings to other demo groups as well. And this demo was released at a demo party called Xenium in Poland last year. So the next demo I'm going to show is an Amiga demo. So the console is here. Unfortunately, some technical problems, so I couldn't really get it running in real time, but still got it here anyway. And it is hooked up and showing stuff, but couldn't run the demo. So I got a capture of it instead to show. This one is called Facts About Bears. So this demo was released at Revision 2021, which was an online edition of the party because it was during the pandemic. And the major thing about the pandemic is that it brought a lot of the demo scene to the internet. Because previously, before the pandemic, it would be pretty restricted to just being there in person. But these days, since the pandemic, a lot of demo parties are now streaming online, and it's becoming a lot more accessible to people to watch from home and also submit entries from home as well. So the next demo I'm going to show is one that I've been involved with, and also Freya here, called Immaterial. It's the first demo that has been released for a very obscure platform called the Wii U. assets for this, and Freya will also help us with the materials. It's bedtime for... We refer to this train as Imogen.
The train's name is Imogen, and she's real.
So I've got one more demo to show off. Which is called Koniko. So, how do you get involved with the demo scene? So, most importantly, you have to make something to get involved. You can participate in an online demo party. There's still quite a few online parties happening today, and also physical parties that have streams going on that you can submit remotely to. And travel to a physical demo party. There is a website called demoparty.net which shows you where all the local demo parties are happening. And also get in touch with demo scene communities. I've made a list of some helpful resources which you can use to get involved with the demo scene. We have the Demo First chat, which is on multiple platforms. It's all bridged together. So you can send messages on Telegram and they'll appear on Discord and IRC and such. There is a Bark group, which sometimes has announcements for things going on in the demo scene. There is the Field FX Discord, which is a very diverse community. We have a lot of friendly demo sceners there. There's quite a few furries in that group as well. And Instancy, which is a yearly demo party which happens in Jyväskylä in Finland. unfortunately, this year's one has been changed to an online one, which will be happening next week. So there should be information on the Instancy website if you are interested in watching one that's happening very soon. And there's also Revision, which is the big one that I mentioned that's happening in Saarbrücken in Germany, which is on the revisionparty.net website. There's the demo party calendar, which I've also mentioned, and the live code archive. I haven't really mentioned live coding that much because it kind of drifts off into its own category quite a bit. Live coding is usually when there's a DJ on stage and you have a person coding shaders live as the music is playing, so it's like responding to what's going on the screen. And also there's TIC80 and Fantasy Console live coding as well, which is a bit more niche than shader coding. And finally, the Art of Coding, which is a demo scene initiative to get the demo scene into UNESCO Cultural Heritage in Europe as well, which has already been successful in some countries. So in Germany and Finland, I don't know, Netherlands as well, the demo scene is known as UNESCO Cultural Heritage in those countries, and still actively working to make it recognized in more countries as well.
I would just basically say that if you, even if you don't know demo scene from before, if you like making music or making art, like painting or anything, those are still the kind of things that would be welcome into the competitions and most demo parties as well.
Yeah.
I find that quite a fun way to work on stuff and release it at events where it gets put in front of a lot of people.
Yeah, so my first entry into the demo scene was just a photograph, because the demo party that I first went to, Nova, in 2019, they had a photography compo there, so you could just submit pictures that you've taken, and if it does particularly well, then you also get some prizes. So finally, does anyone have any questions?
I always forget that demo scenes or demos are made to demonstrate pushing a system to its technical limits,
Yes.
such as the Unreal one. I think that did one, but that was the lighting.
Yes.
Is that always a necessity?
No, it's not.
There's a bit of a balance that's hard to define, because part of it is about pushing the technical limits of what you're able to create and what the platform can do. And part of it is also a lot of artistic expression, because you can create like a technical demonstration that's boring to watch, but it also takes some like artistic sense to make something that's impressive and interesting to watch at the same time.
I guess as a follow-up, do you know more about the what was the artificially made console called that we saw the
The TIC80.
Yeah, TIC80, yeah.
It was a Pico 8. Yeah. Do you know the limitations of the Pico 8 and what makes that demo like?
I'll leave you to
What
answer that
limits were there?
The demo you're talking about was the TIC80 and not the Pico 8.
Yeah.
But they have like they basically have an artificially created limitations of like a certain low resolution. The TIC80 has 240 by 136 pixels and 16 colors at once, and
yeah, because I would have imagined that like the shattered glass was difficult to make, and that was a showcase of something.
yeah, I assume I haven't looked into the technical
If you- if you-
details
if
of
you
that, but
okay.
it's usually something like this. Not all demos have like pushing things to the absolute limits, but
Yeah.
just in general showing off something.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's two different categories, or more than two, but like the two big categories are like pushing hardware restraints and creative freedom.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I was mostly familiar with the hardware constraints.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need some kind of balance between the two, usually.
In the yellow?
Yeah, I know this is I think my question went in Suda also the last one. My understanding of demo scenes was that they could only be 4 kilobytes executables. But I just been one
So-
that I heard of from a friend at university. But they were doing demo scenes where they could show us the final executable or whatever you were showing on had to fit within the size of 4 kilobytes.
So
It's
that's
right?
that's a category of demo.
Yeah.
So you get size coding demos basically. So you get programmers trying to fit as much as they can into a very small size.
Yeah.
And at parties like Revision, they usually have a specific category for those to be entered into.
There's usually all parties have size coding competitions and other competitions.
But the more popular one is just very similar for hardware, and which is just up to the limits, right?
Yeah. The PC demo compo is usually no limits, but also the organizers can get frustrated if you submit a demo that's 500 gigabytes or something like that.
I mean, sometimes they are like 20 gigabytes or something, and that's.
Here's a fun question: are there boot center demos?
Yes, there are. That's part of the size coding thing. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago, there was an online demo party called Lovebyte, which is all about size coding. So they have like all of their competitions are size coding, and they go from like 4K, 1K down to like 256 bytes, 16 bytes, 8 bytes. You get quite restricted when you're trying to make. Usually, people are then making like assembly programs for DOS in 8 bytes that are quite esoteric, but I don't know.
Not from the top of my head.
I mean, last year's revision to 56-byte winner was one with like what's it called, like ray tracing on DOS.
Yes, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah, it was a quite impressive one. I don't remember what it's called.
There's a very prominent size coder in the scene called Helmood. You could probably find him if you search for Helmood's DOS or Helmood size coding. It's not online at the moment.
Okay, sure.
Yes.
In case of the RTX example, is the trick to make the computer, the CPU, talk exactly the right way to the graphics processing unit to make the stunning effects?
Yeah, that's a part of it. If you're working on a modern PC, you have like a graphics card such like an RTX something, for example. And usually when you're developing a demo, you would be kind of targeting a certain demo party because you know when you want to release something. And they would have announced on their website what kind of computer they will have. So you know ahead of time that you will have this CPU and this graphics card. And you can kind of work with that. But that's kind of one of the technical challenges.
At the back.
Yeah. What are some particular challenges you face when creating a demo for the Wii U?
Could you speak up a bit?
Oh, yeah. What are some particular challenges you guys face when creating a demo for the Wii U?
So I did the 3D modeling for it, so I'm not really too familiar with the technical side of it. But I think Verpo can probably.
Yeah, I wrote some of the code in the demo. There were about 3 of us working on the code, and what I found the most challenging was that it's not really documented. There is like there is like all the homebrew libraries you can use to make stuff happen and that, but those don't really have documentation because nobody's written it, and you can't really go to archive.org and download the Nintendo SDK because that would be illegal.
Oh. Nintendo.
Yes.
So when submitting to like a demo party or so, is there like any time frame, any restrictions, or is it just like if you did something cool, you can submit it?
For most competitions, it's anything that hasn't been released before. There's just a deadline that's usually like the same day or day before the compo. And
usually each party has rules and information on what you can and can't submit.
Usually it's anything that hasn't been publicly released before. Some combos are fast combos that you already mentioned, where the challenge is announced during the party, so you have to start working on it in a limited time. But that's basically the types of combos.
At the back.
What's a platform you haven't seen a demo for that you would like to see one for?
Good question. It's a very good question. Well, that would have originally been the Wii U, but then we made a demo for the
I don't know.
The V-Smile will make smart glasses.
That is a very good point. So we're still due to make a demo for the V-Smile. That will probably happen at some point. So a very interesting platform. Yes?
Do you know if there are any VR demos?
Any what demos?
VR.
Oh, VR demos. Yes, there are VR demos.
Okay.
I don't remember from the top of my head what they're called, unfortunately, but I know they do exist, and I know that one of them is on Steam as well.
They're less common because it's hard to show off in a competition, but
Makes sense.
they do exist.
Yeah. Yes?
Have you ever come across an event when a packer was disallowed? Executable packer? Like
No, I don't think so. I think most size coding entries use some kind of packer. I don't think any competitions have disallowed them.
I know I've seen it with size-limited competitions, but is it common for demos to be interactive or even at the level of a game, or is it mostly real-time videos?
So some demo parties have game compos as well. So Revision being a prime example of that. I'm actually the organizer of the game compo at Revisions because I have a gaming background. I did video game stuff before getting into the demo scene. But Assembly as well also has a game jam that happens during the event, and that combines with the demo scene stuff as well.
Usually the demo compos require that it's like it's not interactive and sometimes even requiring that it's deterministic. I don't remember, but some parties have specific competitions for interactive entries.
Following on from that question, how much overlap is there between like demo scene stuff and just game jams in general?
So there's quite a bit of overlap because the game dev stuff is kind of how I got into the demo scene in the first place, because in the UK a lot of game studios and people in those game studios originally worked in the demo scene, and they got their jobs from what they did in the demo scene.
Also, if you know any Finnish game studios, all of those originate from the Finnish demo scene.
Such a Housemarque.
Housemarque and
yeah.
everything.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Who made the first evolution of mounting machinery and stuff?
Blue Raven. I think we can.
Good questions.
Yeah, thank you for the questions.
Yeah, we have some contact. I'm on Mastodon and Blue Sky, and Freya is on Mastodon. Feel free to follow us and get in touch. And if you come up with any questions later on as well, I'll be happy to answer them online as well. And that is the end. Thank you everyone for coming as well. I was not expecting so many people. I have some flyers with links on them as well. It's kind of a taste of what was on the. I'll just stand by here. That's also true for Supercell.